Hello everyone, this is Crystal Potthoff and welcome to 2024. In 2024, Easter comes early in the Western Church. I believe it's March 31st, so it's really early. I'm not sure what the date is in the Orthodox Church, but because it's early, I wanted to start the year off talking about teaching classes. And maybe some of you have thought about teaching classes and you wanted some ideas. So this idea for these sets of videos came from my friend Angela. She watches the YouTube channel. So hi, Angela. Thank you for this idea. She taught a class in the beginning of December and she reached out to me and we kind of talked about some different things to think about when you're asked to teach a class. So I made some notes when I talked to her, and this is not by any means a comprehensive list. So this is going to be in 3 parts. First part, I'm just going to talk about some things. And then at the end of the video, I am going to put up a list of bullet points. So if you wanted to do a screenshot of those, you can do that. And then the next video is going to be how I set up the room when I teach at a church where I teach frequently, and some things that you can think about as you set up wherever you might be teaching. And then the third video, I'm going to show you how I make my varnish cups. These are cups that are used to transport an egg home, a varnished egg home. It has to be a blown egg to work in these cups, but it's pretty simple to make. And it's reusable, which is a great thing. If you have people taking multiple classes, they can bring it back. But that'll be the third video in the series. So to start off with, so if you have been approached by someone to teach a class, or maybe you just think you would like to teach a class, we'll say 3. 3 things you really need to consider first is, who are you teaching? Are these adults? Are these children? Is this mixed? A wide range of ages? It's really your comfort level on what you feel comfortable teaching. If you're teaching beginners, or if you're teaching some people that have done this before, or maybe it's a mix, who are you teaching? Because that will determine, do you want to use electric Kiskas? If you have a lot of young kids, maybe you want to use electric rather than a candle heated. Maybe the place where you're teaching doesn't allow candle heated. They only allow electric. But I'm jumping ahead there. So who are you teaching? And how many? So that's kind of the second question. How many people are you going to be teaching? If you're brand new at teaching, I would really recommend you start with a small number, like maybe 5 or 6, or maybe you just want to practice with one person. Me personally, I did not start out teaching 20 people all at once. In fact, I didn't even start out teaching. My friend, Shelly Janikowski, taught, and I helped her. And then when she moved, then I took over teaching the classes. So you want to think about who the age range is, the skill level, and then whether you're going to be doing a candle or electric, and then how many people. And this is really, and how much time do you have to teach? Because some places I teach, they say, oh, you have 2 hours. Some places we have 3. So if I only have a couple hours, I will actually draw the pattern on the egg for them so that part of the process is done. Because if I only have 2 hours, sometimes that drawing part can take an hour, and you don't want people spending their hour doing that. You want them to start doing the wax. So that's one recommendation there. And then where are you going to teach? So depending on how many you have, you want to make sure you have a space that's big enough to accommodate people so they're not bumping into each other, especially if you're going to have candles. You don't want those being knocked over. And I'll show you how Next week I'll show you how I set it up the safest way possible for my comfort level for people to use candles. But then you want to have, I have a separate table for the dyes. If you have an area that has a sink, that's a good idea in case an egg needs to be washed back, but I do try to limit that. And I will limit that by saying maybe you have 3 color choices and here's your color choices. And I'll give them like 5 different sets of color choices because then they don't require the wash back. But if you have a place that has a refrigerator or an oven to help take the wax off, that's also a nice thing to have too. And then, so depending on how many you're teaching, their skill level, how much time do you have to teach, where you're teaching, then you can decide kind of what pattern do you want to do. And if it's a lot of new people, maybe you want to pick out some easy patterns, and I'll give you some ideas on that too. The other thing I like to do is first off with the ages. If they're under 16, I require an adult to be present, just for the safety of that person. A younger person might need some adult supervision, that if there's a big class, I may not be able to provide really constant adult supervision, especially if we're using candles, and also for insurance reasons. And also I'm teaching Pysanky. I am not a babysitting service. So you want to take those things into consideration too. The other policy that I have is, I'm sorry, let me back up for a minute. You might want to say you have to be over a certain age to take the class. And that may be a restriction too of where you're teaching it. They may say, we're only going to allow adults in there. So that you might be restricted by where you're teaching it. So you just want to be very clear about what ages are allowed. And I tell you, a horror story we had when we were first teaching and we didn't have an age limit on it. We had a woman call me and say she was bringing her 3-year-old son. And I called her back and said, this is not an activity for a 3-year-old, because we were using the candle heated ones. And she brought him anyway. And he was 3, he didn't want to sit still. And and she said, he's not going to do it. But she said, I just had to bring him until his dad gets here. So we're thinking this isn't going to be too long. So the dad did come and he picked up the 3-year-old and he dropped off the 2-year-old. So we're like, okay, we need to be really clear about ages and what's acceptable and what isn't. So we learned a lot in teaching. So an age policy, you want to be very clear about that. And then also the food and drink policy. I have a policy that you can have a drink at the table, but it has to be in an enclosed container. You don't want a drink spilling on the table and going everywhere. I don't really like food at the table, but some people will bring food anyway. It's just, and I always tell people, you got food on your hands, you want to wash your hands before you touch the egg. So I really prefer no food, or if you are going to eat food, eat somewhere else. But sometimes that doesn't work out. Sometimes we have food at Pysanky and we just have to be careful that we don't get it on our workspace. So we've got, who are you teaching? How many? Where? Your age policy, your food and drink policy, any other policies that you might think about. That would be a consideration, but those are the main things. So now let me show you some ideas on simple patterns that would be good for beginners. So here are 3 relatively simple eggs that would be good for a beginner class and could easily be adapted if there are people that have more experience with Pysanky. So this is when we used to teach, and we had, like every year we had beginners. We usually started out with this pattern or a version of this, which is the 8-pointed star, which is relatively easy to draw out. This one has a lot of wax on it. You might want to adapt the pattern so that you don't have quite as much wax. But an 8-pointed star is fairly easy, in my opinion, to draw out. Now, you might want to have the egg in different stages of completion. You might want to have several samples of different color patterns, different designs for people to kind of get some inspiration, and that would hold for all of these eggs. You might want to have one drawn out so people could see what it looks like. And on here, this one has this line, but certainly it doesn't have to have that. You want to pick ones too that will be easy if they're doing candle heated versus electric. You might, especially if they're beginners, you don't want a lot of detail in it because people are learning how to keep the temperature kind of consistent. So anyway, an 8-pointed star is really good. The Ukrainian gift shop has a pamphlet with a pattern for an 8-pointed star. They're, I think, $1 a piece. I don't know. You know what? The prices have changed, but they used to have a pamphlet. I don't know if they still do. You do want to be aware of copyright infringements. If you're developing your own pattern, you're probably okay. And what I will do is I will make a printed pattern. I'll do the egg. I'll take pictures of it in various stages, and then I'll put it into like a PowerPoint document and print it out. You may not have the ability to do that. That's okay. I have found that while people ask for the pattern, they don't always follow it. So maybe they follow it at home, but in the class they just ask questions, so which is fine. So 8-pointed star. Another one, and while it looks complicated, and this is one of my very first ones, is the 48 triangle division. It's so adaptable, and if you draw this for them, it's very easy for people to do. They can see the triangles. They can put things in every other one. This one has these other triangles and dots, but you can do lines. You can do swirly things. This pattern is so easily adaptable to a variety of different inspirations. So 48 triangle is actually a good beginner egg. It can be frustrating to draw it because it is a little complicated to draw the initial lines. So you could help people out by starting to do some of that. And then this pattern, I believe this is in the Ukrainian gift shop children's book, either this one or something similar to it. It's kind of the windmill pattern, so a little similar to this. You got 4, and then in the other ones you've got these swirls and some things up here, and then this dividing line. So this again is a relatively easy pattern. You don't have a whole lot of drawing with it, and what I always caution people is don't draw in everything, because your wax probably isn't going to go there anyway. You draw your initial dividing lines. You put some of the lines in. You don't draw these little lines in with your pencil because you don't need that. So these are 3 good, easy beginner patterns. Pick something that you know. Pick something that you like, because you're going to be doing this and helping with it. So make sure you know and understand the pattern, whatever you pick out. If you're going to have a class where you just say, hey, here's some books, pick whatever you want from them, and I'll help you do it, that is fine. However is your comfort level teaching. Just be ready to answer a lot of different questions, because people are going to be at different points in their learning process, and since they're all doing something different, you'll have to just pay attention to what people are doing. So I hope this helps you with some starter points, and I'll be back. I'll show you a bullet point list of some ideas, and you can take a screenshot of that to help you plan for your class.